everybody, and happy Video Monday. This is Tisha Mahar. Today I have a super awesome topic to discuss with you, and it was inspired by an email that I received recently from a super lovely girl, and she basically said, Tisha, I really want to be vegan, but I feel like crap. Help. And I know that this girl is not alone in that boat because I have literally received so many emails over the years from plant-based women and men who really want to be vegan, but they feel like they're not thriving. They're surviving, yes, but they don't feel their absolute best. The first thing to note is that can go for any diet, of course. This isn't just the plant-based diet that has this reputation of making people feel bad. In fact, it is usually the opposite. But what needs to be noted is that often when people start a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet, they're coming from a standard American diet, a diet that contains lots of processed foods, processed oils, sugars, and anybody is going to feel better when they move from a standard American diet to a whole foods-based diet. Whether that whole foods-based diet is plant-based, whether it's paleo, whether it's a Mediterranean approach, that detail isn't what I'm concerned about right here as I begin this discussion. The main thing is that if you are following a whole foods plant-based diet, more digging needs to happen if you're not feeling well. Sometimes, commonly, also what happens is people move from the standard American diet and they feel fantastic. And they're like, oh yeah, it's my new plant-based approach. That's the thing. So they don't pay attention sometimes to the details about what they're eating. They don't do the work to make sure that they're getting the vital nutrients that they need that they might not be getting enough of on a plant-based plan. Or perhaps they neglect some other aspect of lifestyle or diet. Remember, it's not only about the foods. If somebody comes to me and they says, I feel like crap, it must be my diet. It's not always your diet. Sometimes there's a lifestyle practice or a behavior practice that is causing those symptoms that the person has. So there's obviously so much to consider. But for the purposes of this video and answering this question here today to help hopefully some of you, I'm just going to assume that the person coming to me saying that they feel like crap is already eating a whole foods plant-based diet that anybody looking in on the situation would say, oh, that's a super healthy diet. Okay, so that's the assumption. If you are feeling like crap and you're not eating a whole foods-based diet, always start there. Always start there. Okay, so what else could be making someone feel like crap when they're already eating a vibrant, healthy, plant-based diet? The first thing is perhaps that person has developed a deficiency, or maybe they even had a deficiency before they moved into this diet, or they were on the way to one, whatever it is. The most common deficiencies that I would say that I see in clients of mine would be vitamin D, and that goes for no matter what diet you're on. Vitamin D, B12, super important to watch that as a plant-based eater. Vitamin D, B12, B vitamins in general tend to get low. Iron, and lastly, I want to mention zinc and omega-3. So any of those, if they become too low, you will likely not feel well. So how do you get around fixing this? Get some blood work done. Get those things that I just mentioned tested. Make sure that your levels are in the optimal ranges. If they're not, look up the types of foods, the plant-based foods that are rich in those specific things that you're low in, and or add a supplement to your current regime, and that hopefully will bring those levels back up to a healthy range. Absolutely, in my opinion, everyone should be taking B12 if they are vegan, and I would also say to make sure that you're taking vitamin D, especially if you don't live in a super sunny, hot tropical place. Those are really critical. Omega-3 you can get from algae in a really good source. I don't personally think that flax and chia gives people enough omega-3, vegans, vegetarians, so I personally like to suggest an algae-based omega-3 for that. So that's the first thing. Maybe you have a deficiency, and maybe that's why you feel like crap. Maybe it's not that you are eating vegan, eating vegetarian. Second thing, you might feel like crap because you're experiencing or you have a gut issue. Whatever caused that, there's a million reasons. That's for sure a whole other video. But if you have a gut problem, you could be dealing with an array of different types of digestive symptoms. But the gut is also intricately linked to your brain health. So if you are experiencing issues in your gut, you might also be experiencing things like anxiety, depression, brain fog, these types of things. So gut health is important. If you suspect that there's wonky things going on in your gut, I encourage you to do the work to rebalance that, whatever that takes. If you need more help, that's something that I could help you with, or another holistic nutritionist that you trust. Or a doctor, a functional medical doctor would be amazing, an ND. Any of these people would be fantastic at helping you with that issue. So find someone you trust and employ them to help you to get to the bottom of it. The next thing I will mention for why you could feel like crap is sort of similar to what I was mentioning about lifestyle. It could be a lifestyle issue, but hormone imbalances can also make people feel really bad. And it's possible that the diet contributed to your hormone imbalance if there was something missing or you weren't eating enough, etc., or you were eating too much or whatever the issue might be. But if you have any issues with your hormones, you need to rebalance those. It is super important. You will feel really, really off if your hormones are off. So that is something to, again, work on fixing. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop being vegetarian or vegan if that feels really right for you for whatever your personal reasons are. But hormone imbalance is important. So you can get your hormones tested. If you're a female, you can get a whole female hormone panel. Men as well, get your testosterone checked, get your cholesterol checked, these different important markers that can help give some insight into what's going on with you hormonally. If you're a vegetarian man and you have no sex drive, that's an issue. There's something going on with your hormones. There's something not working. So, yeah, figure it out. More commonly, it happens to women. And as somebody who has gone through extreme hormone imbalance themselves, I have videos on that if you're interested. I encourage you to not mess around. It is awful when your hormones are wacky. So do that work to rebalance your body. Be good to yourself. The next thing is that maybe you are not eating enough. A lot of people go to a plant-based diet and they feel great and they feel light and they have energy, but over time they could develop some issues like a hormone imbalance or a nutrient deficiency if they are simply not taking in enough overall food and enough overall nutrients each day. Thyroid imbalances are also common, so make sure you are eating enough. Again, if you don't know what that amount should look like, speak to somebody who, again, you trust. You can join my group as well on Facebook. I'll mention at the end of the video. I'm happy to support you there, and there's lots of other people who are following a plant-based diet that would happily, I'm sure, chime in and offer you some advice there too. The next thing, and if you're eating too much, it doesn't matter what your diet is. If you are overeating all the time, you could develop some issues in terms of your weight. Maybe that's why you feel crappy. You could develop some issues in terms of your insulin and your blood sugar. You could develop insulin resistance. It doesn't matter what diet it is. That could happen if you're excessively eating all the time. So figuring out the appropriate amount of food for your body. You know, you don't have to count calories. I'm not an advocate of that necessarily, but you need to have a sense of it at least. The next thing is you might be eating the wrong mix of macronutrients for your body. So we have micronutrients and we have macronutrients. The micronutrients are the things like iron, your zinc, your vitamin C, your potassium. These are vitamins, minerals. Macronutrients refers to your carbohydrates, your fats, and your proteins. How much of those you're taking in. Some people go on really extreme vegan diets, really, really high carb, low fat diets, or on the contrary, perhaps really high fat, low carb diets. And though these diets can work really well for people, I also think that they do tend to cause more imbalances than the people that I've seen or have met who have followed a diet that is a little bit more balanced overall, and that the people who haven't gone to any extreme. Also, as somebody who has tended to always go to extremes, I personally have learned that more is not always better, or more extreme is not always better, especially if you're a sensitive snowflake, which I personally feel that I am. So learn your body and learn what is best for you. That is so important in this discussion. So when I say figuring out the right macronutrient percentages for you, feel it out and try and experiment. Some people find that they feel a lot better on a lower carb, higher fat, moderate protein kind of diet. Other people find that they feel really fantastic on a high carb diet. It really depends on the person. There's total opposite extremes with both of these. So make sure you take the time to figure that piece out, because that will set you up for so much more ease the rest of your life. You know, when you sit down to make your lunch or your breakfast, you know which macronutrient to kind of keep higher than perhaps the others to really stay stable. Proteins are needed no matter what, obviously in a certain good amount. Protein is important for all of your structures, for your skin, for your hair, for your nails. It's important for hormone production, for adequate hormones in the body. So for retaining and building muscle, it's important. All the macronutrients are important, is the point here. So it's just finding that right mix for you. Fats and carbohydrates tend to be the energy sources. Proteins are more there for structure. So figure out which of those you do better on. Is it a little bit higher carb, or maybe a lot higher carb, or is it a little bit lower carb, higher fat? Again, if you need help with this, there are ways to figure this out for yourself, and I can also offer advice on that. If you have questions, please don't post them below this video, because I have a lot of videos and it's really hard to get to all of them and answer all of the questions. So please join my group. It's called Tisha's Group, once again, on Facebook, and I will gladly answer any question that you have there within the very same day. So join the group, and happy to help. The next thing I want to mention is that you might not handle lectins so well. So lectins are something that is found in your grains, in your beans, in your nuts and seeds. They're pretty high in things like chocolate as well, certain superfoods that people love. So lectins are referred to as anti-nutrients, and they can sometimes disrupt the ability for the body to absorb the proper nutrition from the food. Some people are more sensitive to lectins than others. Some people will have gut issues if they are very sensitive to lectins. So that is another thing to look at. If you are really struggling with gut issues or with inflammation, you might want to try eliminating the high lectin foods for a while and see if that helps. autoimmunity, which is becoming more and more common these days, autoimmune diseases, things like lupus and Hashimoto's thyroiditis and fibromyalgia. All of these are autoimmune conditions, and lectins, maybe not always, but they tend to aggravate these types of conditions. So it really pays to do testing. So if something is off, if it's your hormones, you want to get hormone tests. If it's your gut, you might want to do a stool test or a food allergy test. That leads me to the next thing. You might have a food allergy. No matter what diet you're on, if you are reacting in weird ways after you eat something, there's something going on there. That might be one of the reasons you feel like crap. You might have an allergy to a plant-based food, like almonds, like tree nuts, like a seed. You could have an allergy to, what are my allergies? So I had a test done once, and my allergies were apparently egg white, Brazil nuts, peas, and there was something else. Oh, gluten, of course, and dairy. I've had that my whole life. So peas, I never would have thought of peas, and I was eating quite a lot of peas at the time, and I was also doing pea protein powder, for example. So again, sometimes it's something a little bit more obscure. We know that wheat, gluten, dairy, eggs, these tend to be the higher sensitivity foods for a lot of people, but sometimes there can be something obscure like peas or Brazil nuts that could be causing you some symptoms. So it's, again, worth doing an elimination diet, testing and trying, taking out certain things that maybe you eat a lot of or you eat daily, and just see if it makes a difference. Again, guys, if you need help with any of this, I'm happy to help you. Again, my links will be down below. The last thing I want to mention here with regards to this discussion is it is common for people to be plant-based and to be trying this and trying that and going through this process for years, not feeling well and just not being open to experimenting and maybe being open, keeping an open mind to the fact that perhaps your body, for whatever reason, is not liking the plant-based diet. Maybe it's because you have an autoimmune condition. Maybe it's because you have some kind of crazy adrenal imbalance that could require a little bit more protein, animal protein, even maybe certain nutrients. Also, we do not always want to rely on supplements. If you're having a hard time after years of trying to get your iron levels up, for example, and you're taking supplemental iron for years and years, I do believe that we absorb the nutrients better from the actual food. So I'm going to say it, guys. If you are not thriving as a plant-based eater and you feel you have tried a lot of things, if you're exhausted from trying a lot of things, if you've worked with someone to try to troubleshoot, because I know a lot of vegetarians, they really, from a morality standpoint or from a mental perspective, emotional perspective, they really want to be vegetarian, vegan. But nothing, absolutely nothing, guys, is more important than your health. Life is too short to feel like crap. So one thing you could do is you could try for 1 month, for 2 months, whatever feels right for you. You could try and experiment and introduce a source of animal protein, whether it is eggs, whether it is fish, whatever, if it's beef, if it's collagen sourced from an animal source. You could try, and you know what? It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you any less humane a person. You can't do much good in the world if you're sick in your room all the time. So take care of yourself. No one needs to know. Do your experiment if you feel you need to, and just see how you feel. If you introduce one of those things and you have it on a daily basis for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and you feel better, well, maybe that's going to change your mind about things, or maybe you will include that food for a while in a medicinal way and then go back to being vegetarian. That's possible too. Maybe you, for some reason, became really, really low in something, and so you can introduce the food, the other thing for a while, the animal food for a while, and restore yourself a little bit, and then just be more careful moving forward. Go back to plant-based, but just make sure you take your B12 this time, or whatever the thing was you were neglecting. The main thing is, I want to say, is that there is a ton of, I'm getting all fired up now, there's a ton of nutritional dogma out there, and I recovered myself from orthorexia, and so I know this better than anyone else, how hard it can be. There's a ton of food dogma, and there's a lot of people out there advocating for certain eating styles who will make people feel bad and small and less than for perhaps feeling genuinely that something isn't working for them. That is wrong. That is cruel, and that is incredibly self-righteous. Who is anyone to say what is the best thing for another person? Yes, when I work with my clients, I help guide them through looking at certain signs and symptoms and cues that the body is saying, and I work with them to figure out what's working for them, what's not working with them. But I never get on a consult and say, stop eating this, stop eating that. No, that's not the process that I use. So and there's probably going to be some like hate going on in the comments about that. And again, if you react that way, it's so self-righteous. And at some point in your life, hopefully you will grow enough to realize that that's no way to behave. But we'll leave that. I won't start any fights here. I want people to feel well, and I want people to be their best selves, whatever that means. So figure it out, guys. If you feel like crap and you've been feeling like a crap for a few years, go through these things that I mentioned. Make sure you've really, been covering all of it. You can work with me. I love to incorporate an Ayurvedic approach to my consulting. So if you don't know what that is, we have doshas. There's 3 different doshas. Sometimes somebody could be a specific dosha and they're doing certain lifestyle practices and they're eating a certain way that isn't conducive to their dosha type. That kind of thing can really change how someone feels if they really dial that in. Another thing I like to use is the thing I mentioned about figuring out the best macronutrient mix for the person. Do they do better with higher fat? That's me, for example. Or do they do better with higher carb? That's one of my best friends. She thrives on it. So every person is different. Figuring out you is what this is all about. Designing your diet. It'll be so freeing and you will feel so much better. Please join my group. Again, it's called Tisha's Group. I have a community. I have a beautiful community there who will be happy to offer their opinions and suggestions in a kind, loving way. And I also monitor that page on a daily basis, and I respond to questions within 24 hours. If you would like to do a one-on-one consultation with me, that's also an option. The link to my website will be down below, or you can send me a private message on Instagram or Facebook. Again, all my links will be down below. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for keeping an open mind, and I hope that some of this content has resonated with you, and perhaps one of the things I mentioned is the thing that will help you to thrive on a plant-based diet, because I certainly think it's a powerful, healing, amazing diet for some people.